Imagine an animal so horrifying, so sadistic, that it made a man question his faith in God. A creature that hijacks its prey's mind and slowly consumes it from the inside out, all while it is entirely aware of and helpless to stop its inevitable fate. Imagine that these monsters are so omnipresent, there's millions of them across the globe, outnumbering any other form of life on this planet. Well, you don't need to imagine, it's real, and unless you're a caterpillar or something, you don't really need to worry. Parasitoid wasps are thought to be one of the most species-rich animals, with the current estimated total number of species being roughly on par with beetles, although we've only documented a tenth of them for reasons. Quick side note here, I'll be using the terms parasitoid and parasite a lot in this video. The main difference is that parasitoidism is a specific form of parasitism that typically involves the host dying at the end of the parasite's life cycle. So, why are there so many wasp species? And why are they so ruthless? And yes, they really did make a man question his faith in God. The reason why there's just so many parasitoid wasps mostly comes down to their life cycle. I'll give a quick overview of parasitoid wasps' life cycle, just to make sure we're all on the same page. These wasps first inject a host species with their eggs. More on this later because there's some absolutely horrifying stuff going on here. These hosts are typically caterpillars, but they can use pretty much any insect in any stage of life. There's even some parasitic wasps, like tarantula hawks, that use arachnids. After injecting their eggs, they then hatch and begin eating away at their insides, which eventually kills the host. After the larval wasp grows big and strong, it turns into a pupa, eventually emerging as a big, beautiful wasp and begins the cycle all over again. Now, why are there just so many different parasitoid wasp species? Well, just think about the hosts for a second. It's evolutionarily advantageous for a wasp to specialize in getting really good at targeting just a handful of insect species. And since there's such a diverse range of insects to use as hosts, this led to massive diversification in parasitic wasp species. There's even instances of an Ouroboros type cycle of parasitoid wasps using other parasitoid wasps as hosts. The fact that these messed up little guys are so abundant actually did make a man question his faith in God, and that man was none other than Charles Darwin. In a letter he wrote in the 1860s, he said, "There seems to me too much misery in the world. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created the Ichneumonidae with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars." This wasn't just pointless existential angst. Charles Darwin was actually a devout Christian, and realizing just how horrifying, cruel, and merciless some animals were was a real contributing factor into developing his ideas of animals evolving through natural laws. The influence parasitoid wasps had on Darwin has even led to some groups calling for them to be called Darwin wasps, which, considering what he thought of them, seems a bit mean-spirited, but I think he'd appreciate the sentiment. This will always be one of my favorite Darwin facts, since an animal's life cycle managed to be so cruel and twisted that it helped one of the most influential scientists of all time form his hallmark theory. Let's head back to the life cycle of the wasps, because when I was explaining it earlier, you may have been thinking, wow, this sounds pretty messed up. And it's not actually as bad as I made it out to be. It's much, much worse. They inject their eggs into their hosts using their ovipositor. This is effectively a massive, at least in comparison to them, syringe they use to inject not only their eggs, but venom and viruses into their hosts. This venom is actually really interesting. It's very different from a lot of other animals' venom, largely because its main purpose is to prepare the host for being slowly eaten alive, rather than for just defense or hunting. It has a bunch of potential pharmaceutical applications, and it could do lame stuff like save people, but that's not why you're here, and it's not why I'm here. Let's talk about how their venom lets them perform mind control. Let's start with our first certified psychopath, Ampulex compressa, or the emerald cockroach wasp. This wasp begins reproducing by finding a cockroach and injecting it with its venom, but no eggs yet. This first sting serves to incapacitate the roach so it can then sting it again in the head. The second sting is where the magic happens. By magic, I mean it lobotomizes the roach. The second sting is straight in the head and disables their escape reflex and causes prolonged sluggishness in the roach. After waking up from the venom of the first sting, the roach begins obsessively grooming itself for around half an hour. Side note here, everything I can find is that there's no actual evolutionary purpose to the obsessive grooming. From what I've read, it seems to just be a pointless side effect of having their brains stabbed and injected with poison. This is arguably worse than if it did have an evolutionary purpose, because it just feels needlessly cruel. Although needless cruelty is kind of like a motif with these wasps, so. After the roach is finished crashing out, the wasp then gnaws off its antennae and then leads it back, like a dog, to the wasp's burrow, where it then lays its eggs next to the roach, seals it in, and then leaves. Over the following week, the eggs hatch, the larvae burrow into the still living roach, eat away at it before the roach finally dies and the wasps pupate and mature into adults. Despite being basically lobotomized, the roach still has most of its normal faculties, albeit in a highly impaired state. So it is still very much awake and aware of what is happening to it, at least as much as a roach can be aware of what's happening. Quick intermission here. If you don't want to be lobotomized and kidnapped by a wasp, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you. The next wasp I'm going to be talking about is Dinocampus coccinelli, which targets ladybugs, or ladybirds, if you're weird. Much like the emerald cockroach wasp, this wasp also takes control of its host's minds. Technically, it's not the wasp controlling the minds, but we'll get into that. The life cycle of these wasps starts pretty similar to others. It injects its eggs into a ladybug. Then the larvae eat the insides of a ladybug, and this is where it goes from body horror to psychological horror. After the larvae emerge, they form cocoons on the legs of the ladybug. Due to a virus in the wasp's injection, yes, these wasps are spreading literal mind control viruses, the virus then forces the ladybug to then serve as the wasp pupae's bodyguard. What is this wasp's natural predator? Who is going to save us from these mind-controlling monsters? You guessed it, another parasitoid wasp. The one saving grace to this is that since this wasp actually benefits from their host not dying, this is one of the few instances where there's actually a chance for the host to survive being a hellspawn incubator. The virus that this wasp uses is an RNA virus called Dinocampus coccinelli paralysis virus. And shockingly, this isn't the only instance of symbiosis between viruses and parasitoid wasps. In the Brachinid family of parasitoid wasps, there's an entire genus of viruses known as brachyviruses, which co-evolved with the Brachinid wasps that targeted caterpillars. In return for being spread and transmitted across wasp generations, these brachyviruses use their viral magic to neutralize caterpillar immune systems and protect the eggs from being attacked by them. Now, let's get into what these monsters have done to us humans. Not that much, really. Thankfully, they don't parasitize humans, or any vertebrate species for that matter. This is probably the best evidence we have that God does exist. You may have been thinking, these sound a lot like the xenomorph from Alien, and yeah, the resemblance is uncanny. But I've seen a lot of people saying that the xenomorph was directly inspired by parasitoid wasps, but I haven't found anything reliable, so I can't really confirm that. Everything I've seen is that it's not. Despite this, there's been an undeniable link in hymenopterists, the people who study these wasps, and alien references, with one genus of extinct parasitoid wasps even being named Xenomorphia, and one Australian species of wasp even being named Dolichogenidia xenomorph. Now, just to be clear, I'm not being paid by Big Wasp to say what I'm about to say. I am the #1 hater of paper wasps, and I would gladly accept the ecological consequences of red wasps going extinct. But parasitoid wasps, despite being utterly horrifying monstrosities, are actually pretty chill with humans and pretty great guys all around. They play an important role in regulating insect species, and they help keep ecosystems balanced. Since they tend to be so highly specialized in targeting only a handful of species, their presence in ecosystems serves as a natural check to a lot of insect species, keeping the populations under control. They're also a highly effective form of natural pest control for agriculture, letting us control pests without forcing us to go full-on scorched earth on local ecosystems with chemical pesticides. So make sure to thank these wasps, or just stand back and look in horror as it leads a cockroach into its dungeon to be eaten alive by its young. Don't thank these wasps, though. They're mean and unforgivable.